Have you ever noticed something strange about anxiety? It doesn't just change how you feel. It actually changes what your mind is able to focus on. And everything keeps revolving around the same questions in the back of your mind. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if people judge me? Right? Or what if I can't handle it? And once that process starts, it starts to feel like your attention doesn't belong to you. You sit down to work, you have a conversation, or whatever you do, even just relax, and yet part of your mind keeps getting pulled back into the same place again and again. Things that are usually simple start to feel effortful, almost like your mental grip on them has loosened. And it's very easy to assume that anxiety is just an emotion making you feel bad, right? A lot of people don't even know they're anxious or they have anxiety, or even that it's interfering with your intelligence or ability, for example. But what's actually happening is more specific than that. Anxiety changes the way your attention is operating. It's amazing. It changes what gets prioritized. It changes what you focus on. All of this without your permission. You probably may not even notice it. And it changes how much control you feel you have over your own thinking. Once you understand that, the experience starts to look very different. Because the problem isn't that you need to think harder. It's that your attention is no longer under your control in the way that it should be or normally is. And at its core, anxiety is a state where your mind has shifted into threat monitoring. Something feels important, uncertain, potentially dangerous, like your reputation, your health, your future, relationship, and your brain responds by activating a protective mode. Right? I mean, for many years, I had no idea that what I was feeling was anxiety. It's just a very weird feeling, and it doesn't feel good. In threat monitoring mode, the priority becomes simple: detect danger and prepare for it. When there is a real and immediate threat, the system is useful, right? It helps you notice problems quickly and respond to them. But in anxiety, this response doesn't always switch off when the situation becomes safe. Instead, it keeps running in the background of your mind, right? Think about it. You know these thoughts that I'm talking about. Your mind continues scanning, checking possibilities, running simulations of what could go wrong and how you might respond to those things. And the more your attention is pulled into those possibilities, the more real and urgent they start to feel. Now, one of the reasons this becomes so mentally exhausting is because of how limited your working memory actually is. Working memory, right? This is the mental space you use for thinking clearly, for planning, for problem solving, and just holding information in your mind while you work. So when anxiety is active, part of that limited space gets taken up by worry. Thoughts like, what if I made a mistake? What if they think badly of me? What if something is seriously wrong? Or what if you can't handle what's coming? These don't just sit in the background. They actively occupy your mental resources. So when people say they can't think clearly when they're anxious, it's true. It isn't because they've lost their ability. It's because their mental workspace is partially filled with this threat-related processing. A useful way to understand this comes from a psychological model called the Attentional Control Theory. Very useful. According to this idea, your attention is governed by two interacting processes. One of the processes is the goal-directed system. This is part of your attention that is deliberate and intentional. It allows you to decide what you want to focus on based on your current goals. So when this is working well, you could choose to read something, follow a conversation, or stay focused on a task and actually maintain that focus. The other process is, or system, called the stimulus-driven system, right? This is inside of you. And this system is automatic. It reacts to anything that feels important, emotionally significant, or potentially threatening, right? System-driven and goal-driven or goal-oriented. Like a sudden sound, a body sensation, or even a disturbing thought can activate this stimulus-driven system. Now, under normal conditions, these two systems stay in balance. One gives you control, the other keeps you responsive to your environment. But in anxiety, that balance shifts. The threat-driven part of your attention becomes more dominant, and the goal-directed part becomes less stable. So instead of your attention staying where you intend it to stay, your attention gets pulled toward whatever feels urgent in the moment, even if that urgency is not actually meaningful or helpful. So this is where the experience starts to become especially convincing. Because whatever your attention repeatedly returns to starts to feel important just by virtue of that repetition, right? It's just amazing when you think about these two systems that we have and then how our attention is interacting in real time inside of us. So if your mind keeps checking a thought like, what if I get hurt? It doesn't just feel like a passing idea anymore, right? It starts to feel significant and it has to be solved. And then the logic becomes circular. You think about it more because it feels important. And it feels important because you keep thinking about it. At the same time, two key mental functions are being affected. Pay attention. One is inhibition, which is your ability not to follow every thought that appears in your mind, right? Inhibition. I have videos on that. It's what allows a thought to arise in you without you automatically engaging with it. And when inhibition weakens, intrusive thoughts become much harder to ignore, and your attention gets pulled into them more easily. The other mental function is called shifting, which is your ability to move your attention away from something and redirect it somewhere else. When shifting is impaired, you can often recognize that a thought is unhelpful, but still get stuck inside it, and you're unable to fully disengage. That's what creates this looping quality that anxiety is known for. Now, from an evolutionary perspective, this broader and more reactive attentional style makes sense, right? If there's potential danger in the environment, it's safer to scan widely than to stay narrowly focused. But in modern life, where most threats are psychological rather than immediate physical dangers, this response can become overactive in very unhelpful ways. You may notice yourself rereading the same sentence without absorbing it, for example, or losing track of conversations, or jumping between concerns, or feeling like your mind won't settle on anything for long. Again, this is not a sign of weakness, right? It's a predictable outcome of your attention being reorganized around threat detection. The important point underneath all of this is that anxiety doesn't just add negative thoughts. It changes which thoughts gain control of your attention. And once your attention is captured, everything else, clarity, memory, focus, decision-making, they start to degrade as a secondary effect. Now, the encouraging part is that your attentional control is not fixed. It can be trained. Not by trying to suppress thoughts and not by forcing yourself to feel differently, but by developing the ability to decide where your attention goes and keep returning it there even when it gets pulled away. And that means practicing the ability to notice a thought without following it. Imagine that. To stay with a task even when distraction appears. To shift your attention intentionally rather than reactively. And to allow this background mental noise to exist without engaging it. So at first, nothing about the content of your thoughts necessarily changes, right? Anxious thoughts may still appear just as often. Sensations can still arise. Uncertainty may still be there. But what starts to change is your relationship with them. Not every thought you think becomes a command. Not every feeling becomes an instruction, right? And not every worry needs your immediate attention. Slowly, there becomes more space between you and what your mind is producing. That's what we want. Most people try to solve anxiety by thinking more, analyzing more, or trying to reach certainty. But that approach backfires, right? It keeps your attention locked onto the very thing that's driving your anxiety in the first place. A more effective shift is learning to trust that you can redirect your attention even when uncertainty is present. Because thoughts aren't emergencies and your feelings aren't instructions. And uncertainties don't always require your immediate resolution, right? You don't have to pay attention to everything your mind produces. Some thoughts are useful. Some are irrelevant. And some are just predictions that are generated by the threat system in your mind that's trying to protect you. We want to ask a different question. Do I want to continue giving this my attention? Oh, great question. And that's where the practical side of all this starts. Because understanding anxiety like this is useful, but your attention doesn't change because you understand it. It changes through deliberate practice. And that's exactly why I built the attention training program in the members only section of my channel. It's not about trying to suppress your thoughts or calm yourself down in the moment. It's about strengthening your ability to control where your attention goes, under distraction, under pressure, and even while anxiety is still present, right? It's weird, bad feeling. Over time, that changes something very deep in you. You stop experiencing anxiety as something that takes over your mind. And you start recognizing it as something that your attention can stop getting pulled into by itself. By the way, if you want to go deeper into that process, there's a full attention training program available on my channel for members. That's where I break this down step by step, training exercises. You can actually practice them along with me, not just understand the concepts like this. So if you've been living with anxiety, I know it can feel like your mind's working against you, like thoughts are happening to you rather than you processing them. But what's actually happening, it's a shift in how your attention is being regulated. You see, your attention becomes biased towards threat. And notice that worrying consumes your mental resources. And your control shifts away from what you know you should be focusing on. But remember, none of that is permanent. As your attentional control strengthens, something subtle in you changes. Thoughts lose some of their authority, and sensations lose some of their urgency, and then worry loses some of its grip over you. And not because your anxiety disappears, but because it no longer automatically controls where your attention goes. That's where everything starts, right? When you're no longer pulled by what your mind produces, but you're able to decide where to put your attention, even while all these things are happening in your mind. And that's ultimately what changes everything, right? Anxiety can still produce thoughts, can still generate sensations, raise questions about what could go wrong. But those things no longer should have the same power to direct your mind automatically. So instead of being pulled wherever your threat system wants to go, you begin to develop something much more valuable. The ability to decide deliberately where your attention goes next. And that is one of the most important psychological skills you can develop. I cannot emphasize this enough. Because when you gain greater control over your attention, you also gain greater control over what occupies your mental life, what you think about, what you continue to process, and what no longer deserves your time and energy. So if you'd like to strengthen that ability in a real structured, methodical way, again, I've created a complete attention training program in the members section of this channel. It includes structured exercises, detailed explanations, even common mistakes you should avoid, and practical applications for anxiety, worry, rumination, repetitive thinking patterns. So if all that sounds useful to you, consider joining and working through the program with me. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you found this useful. I would ask you to like and subscribe and share the video with a friend. I'll see you in the next video.